This is Art Sense, a podcast focused on educating and informing listeners about the past, present, and future of art. I'm Craig Gould. On today's episode, I speak with Texas-based artist Tom Orr about his artistic journey. Orr is an artist whose large-scale sculptures have been widely collected in the US and Japan, and who is a frequent collaborator with episode 23 guest Frances Bagley, who happens to be his wife. At the end of the episode, I'll be taking a look at some of the week's top art headlines. But first up, The Path of an Artist with Tom Orr. Hey, Tom, I appreciate you sitting down with me. Did you grow up in Texas?
I grew up in Dallas, Texas, as a matter of fact, in Dallas and Lubbock and Garland.
Okay.
Which, it was Oak Cliff, Lubbock, and Garland.
Right.
Which I like to say are the three hot spots of Texas, back
so
then.
Some are hotter than others.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I'm born and raised in Dallas. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got to tell you. But
so did you grow up in an artistic home or like?
Not really. My dad was worked for Mayflower Warehouses, which was his father's company, and my mom was sort of a housewife. This is in the 50s, so she did do this painting of photographs. She'd tint photographs, which a lot of women did back then.
Yeah.
Again, there weren't any like producing artists or practicing artists in my household. One thing though, my mom always took us to the museum, and my brother wouldn't go, but she would always take me to the museum.
Right.
And she made a big point of that. So it was always stressed that art was important, Right. And it wasn't, sometimes I hate to even talk about these things, but it's like, being raised a male in Texas, you've got this, by God, you got to be a football player and that, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Sports are fine.
Right.
But sometimes that emphasis is a lot more than, you should also go to a museum. You should do these things. And both my parents made that kind of important things in our lives, my brother and me.
So what museums would you have been going to back
then?
At
the time, since this was 50s in Dallas, It was the Dallas Museum, the one at Fair Park.
Right.
Which, Fair Park, that's where it was, and that's where we'd go, and there's, as a matter of fact, in the first grade, you have school day at the state fair, and we went to state fair, and the teacher said, okay, we get back to school, and everybody draws something they saw at the fair. So we had they took us through the museum because they were doing this Indian sand painting or something. Right. And also there was a, God, I can't remember his name now. One of those painters that did stripe paintings. I forget. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah, that's all right.
But I saw his painting. That's great to see stripes, And so we get back to school, and people are drawing big texts in the midway, and their first grade version of that anyway. And I thought, I'm going to draw that, make a copy of that painting. So I did these stripes, on a page, and the teacher says, Tom, what is this?
Right.
I said, well, it's what I saw at the fair. And she goes, no. Just, she didn't tear it up, but she said, no, you got to draw something you saw at the fair. I said, I saw this painting in the museum. This is what I want to do. She said, well, no, we need something you really saw at the fair, like big text or whatever. So it's like, sure. I like to say it's my first bad critique of a piece of work.
Yeah, but it's so funny. I have I'll sit here and have conversations with someone, and they'll tell a story like that, and like I'm looking over their shoulder at these prints that you've done that are stripes. Right. Sometimes we can't run away from these things that make an impression on us.
I've got things I'm doing right now that I remember seeing when I was 6 or 7 years old. I mean, it stays with you constantly, and you can act on them, or you can just think about them, or you can turn them into your work, And I've not just stripes, but that's something you just saw there, I guess. But that when another thing is, when I was a kid, my brother and I shared a bedroom, and everybody had Venetian blinds back then. So you got these horizontal stripes on your windows. And if you turn them a little bit, you'll get these beautiful lines of light, on the ceiling. Well, our next door neighbor back in the 50s repaired TV sets, and TV was just a new thing. And he had a color TV set, which is even newer. No one had them. So he'd be tinkering with this stuff in his shop at night. And, of course, we had to go to bed at 8 or 9, whatever. And I can remember being in the bed, looking at these beautiful colored stripes on the ceiling that, did this and this according to how it hit the room, changing colors. And I thought, that is the greatest looking thing, And that still stays with me to this day. The second thing I remember looking at was the Venetian blinds with the cord hanging in front of it, which made that moire pattern, made that dotted line. And I thought that, I'd bat the thing and you'd see this dotted line change. And that's something I'm using all the time now, but it's something I saw when I was very, very young. And of course, then you just think it's kind of cool and different looking. Why is that happening?
Right.
But then when you get older and you think, maybe I could make this and make it do something that's, different than just a natural thing that happens, and a lot of people have done that. I'm not the only one that's, but those things are very important to me, and I still use them all the time.
But you're open to inspiration. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you were. So it sounds like you're at least a really visual kid. Like things,
pretty much.
Visual things made a big impact on you. It sounds like
they did, and I always go back to my brother because I always wonder why my brother, I mean, he's everybody's visual. I mean, he sees things. But he chose to go another route, and I'm always curious about that because he did show me some things when I was young, visual things that are very, very important, and he didn't choose to act on those for some reason. I mean, wonderful guy, great life, I went one way, he went the other, and it's not like we split up. It's just, it's a good question. I don't know why that happened,
Yeah.
What my brother showed me as a young kid, he said, if you draw a box and then you draw another box and you overlap them and then connect the lines, you get this three-dimensional cube. God, I remember going, that is brilliant,
Right.
And so then he also showed me you could take that and you could make like a 3D drawing and put a roof on it, be like a barn or something, I was like flabbergasted by that, and anyway, I'll tell you one more story about this. This is
we're here for stories.
Okay, this is in the first grade. This same teacher that didn't like my stripe drawing from the fair. We're drawing barnyard scenes one day, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make one of those barns my brother showed me how to do. So, I do it and made the roof and and put like a window in it and did that like the same way, like 3D. And so the teacher comes by and goes, oh my God, she said, this is fantastic. She said, how did you learn to do this? I just figured it out, And she said, you take this down there right now and go to that 5th grade art teacher's room and show her this drawing, And I said, okay, and I thought, oh shit, man, that's where, that's the 5th graders in that room. I don't know if I want to go in there or not. I was real embarrassed to do this, So I went and stood in the bathroom for like 30 minutes with my drawing, and I thought, I can't go in there. It's just like my brother may be in there and all this stuff, and I just, kind of shy. And so I go back to the teacher, and she said, what'd she say? And I said, she liked it. And I said, what do you do? Kids, Jesus.
I mean, that's one of those moments, you still remember it, where someone says, I'm good at something, and all of a sudden it's like been branded on your identity. Right. Yeah,
and that might have been the first sign right there, point or indication that I had that something was going on with me that other people maybe didn't have or whatever. And so, at that point, I could always draw. I could fairly realistically, even young. And then I also like to make things. So that was, you tie those together. And I again, being raised in Texas as a guy, you got all these other. So I played a lot of sports and stuff, but that was something I always. This is odd to say. I always kind of knew that's what I would be, because I found it a lot more interesting than anything else that was offered out there. Like, don't you want to be a scientist? Well, yeah, but not really. So, I think that kind of got it going, and. And it's being raised in a different generation, and actually being, in high school in the 60s, and, things were changing like so quick and stuff. It was interesting time to want to be an artist,
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of things, even though it's like today, I think there's a lot of things young artists get that we wouldn't possibly ever get, but we were offered a lot more things than the previous generation,
Right.
So it was a good time to get going as an artist,
So did you go straight to art school out of?
No. I graduated.
So what was the path like?
Oh, this is cool. You'll like this. Garland High School, right? I mean, I swear to God, all I wanted to do was get out of Texas, man.
Right.
And it was 68, and everything was a lot of fun.
Well,
and,
and the world was on fire.
World was on fire, and I was draft age, and I knew I didn't want to go to Vietnam, and so everybody was going to college for deferments and all that stuff. So, and I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. My brother went to Tech. I knew I didn't want to do that and do a fraternity thing. I had no interest
Right.
in any of that stuff. So I thought, well, they got this new thing, El Centro, these junior colleges, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try that. It's Dallas, and my folks had a rent house in Oak Cliff that I could use,
Mm-hmm.
So sure. So I went to El Centro, and that was another good thing that happened to me, because at El Centro, I met 3 or 4 instructors there who, were fairly new instructors at the time. Robin Koch, you might know one of them.
Yeah.
Remember Robin?
Yeah, I do.
He was there, and he was one of my main inspirations. He was the nicest, gentlest. He is. He's
Right.
the gentlest guy, wonderful artist, and he did some artwork at the time that was very, very popular, and he used kind of plexiglass, milk plex with color pushed up against it, where you just got a glimmer of this color behind something else. So these very subtle changes, light changes and things. And I thought, God, that is great,
Mm-hmm.
And I never really wanted to copy what he was doing, but I always thought, I want my work to have that feel, something that's,
Right.
it's there, but it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you probably wouldn't notice, but you really should notice it, because it's more important than anything else around it, Anyway, he was a big inspiration. Plus, he went to Rhode-Island-School-of-Design,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to me one day, and I took a lot of life drawing, all kinds of design classes, everything,
Mm-hmm.
But he said, do you ever think about leaving Texas? I said, oh man, all the time. He goes, well, do you think about going to art school? I said, yep. And so he said, well, you ought to try RISD. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I looked at a lot of places, and he actually administered the test. They give you a test, and he
Right.
administered it to me in the library there at El Centro, and sure enough, I got in. And it was Kansas City, and I want to say Pratt. I don't know. One place in New York I didn't get in, but I did get in Kansas City and RISD. And I thought, let's go to RISD,
Right.
man. Back then, RISD was RISD. It wasn't like it's kind of a big deal, I think, nowadays. But
Right.
I got in there, and I thought that'd be better than Kansas City, And so I was glad I did that. But El Centro is the place I went first, and I met a lot of good instructors there. And at that point, I realized, even though I'm getting this background in drawing and
Mm-hmm.
and life drawing and design and all that, the whole fine arts thing may be real important here, At the tail end of my time at El Centro, I got a job working for the Janie C. Lee Gallery in Dallas. Do you know about Janie C. Lee Gallery?
I'm not sure I do.
I think it opened in 68 or 60, I think 68. It was open till like 74 or maybe no, till 76 or something like that, maybe
Okay.
78. But she only showed blue chip artists from New York and LA.
Oh, wow.
And it was an amazing thing for Dallas, because she was selling artwork, but she was also bringing these people down that some of the collectors didn't know much about around, because it was
Right.
it was kind of a new thing then. And I got to work with Linda Binglis, and I'm sure you don't remember Alan Shields, but man, he was a big thing back then. Larry Bell, and Dan Flavin was supposed to do a show there, and
Oh, wow.
he canceled at the last minute because Janie was going to get married, and that fell apart. But anyway, that was very important for me too, because I got to deal with like real important artists as their kind of gallery helper for 2 weeks or whatever. And
Sure. You're the guy that got to pick him up at the airport.
pick them up at the airport.